Welcome, everyone. I'm Stephanie Kowal. I'm a senior consultant with RPI. Really excited to present on contract management today. It's a really great application. I really enjoy working with it, so it's nice to see other people excited about it. So just starting off with RPI, if you don't know about us now already, we're an Infor Alliance partner. We were founded in 1999. We have 60-plus consultants. And we really like doing presentations and taking team pictures. So on today's agenda, we're going to go through a basic overview of what contract management is, what it has to offer, how it integrates with Lawson S3, what some challenges are, what a typical project approach would be, what the contract creation process looks like, and also some additional features. So feel free to interrupt, ask any questions. That's why I'm here. So what is contract management? It's a landmark application, so it uses a rich client, much like Smart Office. It's pretty easy to use. I like it. You can customize it, so it works well for whatever business processes you have. And it integrates with procurement. So contract management takes in data and sends back data to all these different modules. So with inventory control, you're taking all your item information. Accounts payable, you're getting all of the invoice detail to get your spend. There's lots going back and forth there. So this application is designed to improve your processes, automate a lot of your bid processes. It creates a lot of visibility into the full life cycle of the contract, which you can't really do with PO25 today. So there's a lot of additional complexities that can be managed with this new application. You also can, there's better integration with EDI 832s if anyone's using those today. It simplifies the process. And most importantly, what everyone's excited about is you can manage your special items. Those actually can carry over to PO25.6 if you're using contract management. So that's huge. So contract management works along with strategic sourcing. So a lot of your setups, once you do in one area of the application, it shares the detail with the other. So typically a lot ends up starting in strategic sourcing. You create a bid and a bunch of suppliers will bid on that event. And then whoever ends up winning, you carry it over to contract management. That agreement's in place for about a year, and then you go to renew it, you put it out for bid again, and it goes back into strategic sourcing. So there's a lot of details that get shared back and forth. So you know all the challenges here. There's a lot of different contracts. They all follow different types of processes. There's not one canned approach that you can follow for each contract. Everything's different. So it's very difficult to manage these. And then you may have a different system that you're using, and then trying to integrate that with PO25, it doesn't always work. And there's no visibility. You could be using MetaTrack or another contract system. You have like 5 out there, and you're trying to grab information from all of them. So you can't really report on a lot of detail, and you can't report on performance either, because where is that data happening? Is it in AP? Is it on your PO25.6? What's happening with that information? Also, it can be difficult to track your milestones, any kind of deliverables. You may have some legal requirements that you need to follow. And you also can violate your contract if you don't have a good management process of it. So we're going to go through some design considerations and also a typical project approach, and then we'll get to features at the end. So really the best thing to do if you're thinking of implementing contract management is to get all your stakeholders together and make sure you have them all captured. It's not just to think about just supply chain and your materials contracts. What other types of contracts do you have out there? Your facilities area, if they're working on capital projects and working with contractors, could they benefit from utilizing this tool as well? So open it up and really make sure that they're a part of the process and are educated. It can be used system-wide for a lot of different departments. And really whiteboard and document what's different about each of these types of agreements. Do certain agreements require certain approvals where others don't? And do your materials contracts require you to go through value analysis? And what do those approval types look like? And really focus on the roles in your organization, not the person doing the task. It's really important. Since it's a landmark application, it will hold its own security classes that you'll need to assign. You can combine a lot of them if you have certain users that are wearing many hats. So it's just important not to customize it too much and use what's delivered to you. And really important to not forget to involve IT. There's lots of components that are involved here, and the more support you have from that team, the better. There's integration with LBI as well for the reporting that comes delivered. So there's lots of different complexities that you want to make sure you have support. So within the setup of contract management, there's things called contract classifications, which you basically set up what types of approvals you want to happen for a contract that has that assigned to them. So you can require no approvals. It won't go through any approval process. You can do approvals with redlining and approvals with redlining on document. So you can redline throughout the system or just have it be done in a Word document, and contract management will track it. And contract types, those are very important because you're telling the system what type of contract do you want it to create. So you can have it just sit in contract management and it has no integration with S3 with PO25, or you can choose to create a PO25, but what type? Is it a standing? Is it a blanket? Is it a contract? Is it a catalog quote? And then the contract type will also denote whether or not you want specials to carry over. So some contracts, like if it's a OR contract, it's 40,000 items, and they're not all approved by value analysis. So you may not want all of those special items to carry over. So you can hit a little checkbox and say, no, I don't want specials to carry over, but everything else, if you find a match, bring it over. So that's all a part of contract types. So all the more reason to make sure you have everything figured out when you have everyone in the room and talk through these requirements. There's also other tools in play. So you may be using a different contract management system, or you could be utilizing other data management tools that you may want to end up integrating with contract management using IPA. So make sure you're thinking about all those additional sources of data that you're using to create these contracts. Data conversion and cutoff. So very important if you were to implement contract management to cut off users adding directly into PO25, because then you're not managing in one application. What's your source of truth for your reporting? If you add it into PO25, it does not get sent back to contract manager. So you have to have a cutoff, and you have to have a cutover plan. So anything that you have in PO25 today, it's not going to exist anymore. You're going to want to inactivate it and reload it into contract management. So you have everything starting in your one source of truth now. So you have to do a run out. You can choose to just keep it out there as it's active, but then you'll have to report on both sets of data. We talked a little bit about approval processes and reporting needs. That's very important. So contract management works with LBI, and it comes with a bunch of canned reports. They are better than what Lawson offers for their canned reports. However, they're still very generic, and they may not work exactly for your business model that you want to customize them. So it's really helpful if you have a report writer in-house, or can have gain some skills with Crystal reports. That can be very beneficial. But there's also Spreadsheet Designer, which we're going to get into later, where you may find that you don't need to utilize these LBI reports or just a few of them, and you can come up with your own customized reports just using Excel. Any questions so far? Okay. So master your data files. So we talked a little bit about the agreement cutoff and taking that into consideration, but most importantly is making sure that you're starting off with a good data set, because there's lots of interdependencies between your contract management data and what's in Lawson. So your vendor file. Contract management utilizes your vendor master, but they're built as suppliers. So a vendor can have a supplier number and a vendor number, and they're different numbers, but the supplier number can be associated with that vendor number. And the reason why is because strategic sourcing, if you're bidding out to all these different suppliers, you may not ever have them in your vendor master. So contract management lets you manage that detail. If you do have a vendor, you can associate it for that reason. Otherwise, it's just a supplier. You may never do business with them, but you're tracking them somewhere. You can have parent-child, so you can relate one supplier to another, which can be very beneficial for reporting. So it's good to keep in mind. Along with adding that supplier, there's tax ID components. So you really want to make sure that you're looking out for any duplicate vendors and getting that all cleaned up before you implement contract management. It can get really messy. That takes some time and skill in order to do that, to have those stand out. Your item file is very, very important. So before you implement it, you'll want to make sure that you check out your data integrity, make sure your manufacturer codes and numbers are accurate, cleaned up. If anything needs to be inactivated, inactivate it, and make sure all the way through it's inactivated. Yes?
Would that assist you, you were talking about the tax ID number, would that assist you with multiple divisions of an organization? So for instance, Johnson & Johnson and all of their different divisions, that you could actually utilize that and then tie them in to say, here's the parent and here's all the children?
Yes, exactly. Yep. And there's a whole section that basically has what they call it, like a tree approach, where you can see all that mapped out a lot easier. So it can assist you with reporting, and you can layer that in afterwards if you wanted to. It's just the whole duplication. If you have duplicate vendors out there, it can get really messy. Same thing with items. So if you don't have a good management process of PO13 and inactivating it, and who's your default PO13, all of that has to be ruled out and cleaned up before you implement. You can choose not to do it at all, but once you start loading these contracts in, you're going to get a whole bunch of line item errors. Either it's finding a PO13 that's out there that's still active, but your item master isn't active. It picks up on certain pieces of data, and then you have to clean it up. So that's also a great thing, because your contracts team can help keep your item master up to date and accurate. It forces you to do that. It doesn't allow them to load certain parts of the contract until that item is cleaned up. So that can be really beneficial. There's also manufacturer and distributor contracts, which can be kind of complicated, but also very helpful. So I know some people choose to, for their distributor contracts, they just do the markup math themselves and then just load it in. And they wouldn't have the manufacturer contracts within PO25, they just have the details somewhere else. This would let you manage all of the manufacturer contracts in contract management associated with the distributor contract, which one's preferred, and only that distributor contract would feed over to PO25, PO25.6. All right, so project approach. So gather your requirements. What are your business needs? What do you want to implement first? What would you rather wait for? So a lot of organizations will choose to start with their materials, goods, supplies contracts and handle those special items first. And then they're going to layer in their legal contracts during the second phase. So understanding what's important to you, understanding if you want to do approvals right away, all those things require different team members and different decisions. So it's really important to work that out at the beginning, and then obviously be a little flexible and change things ongoing. So prepare, do all that cleansing of data, remembering that you can use all the contract information from your GPO to help analyze your information and make sure that it's all accurate.
Hey, Stephanie,
Yes.
you look at that contract types and classification. We're in the middle of going through contract management right now, so it's not as easy as you think. I mean, and I'm new to Lawson, so I'm totally new to this side of the business. So, but it's confusing as hell relative. There's redundancy in a lot of the naming conventions that have set up screens. A lot of redundancy in several screens. So it's not clear at all what they define it as, and then the user guides are totally useless.
Yes, agreed.
You know, so
Agreed.
you know, I mean, it's not as straightforward as POs, standing orders, quotes, or whatever.
No, you're absolutely right. Training is a big thing. This is not a new application. It's been out for a while, but there's not that many healthcare organizations using it. So there's not too much of a community yet. You know, there are some struggles depending on what version that you're on. I'd say if you're on the latest, and well, maybe not the latest and greatest, but a couple patches behind, if you're on 10 and have the latest version of contract management, things are a lot better for you. But some people are on some older versions. So, you know, there's complexity with how data is going back and forth. And exactly to your point, how you're setting it up at the beginning and making sure that you understand what Infor is saying, what this means, that you understand how it means to you. Contract types, you may think that that's something else in the contract world, but it means something totally different in
Right, it
contract
depends on
management.
how you use that in your own organization, previously.
Exactly. And it's just like, you know, PO codes in a way that you don't want 50 different contract types. You want to keep it standard and specific as much as you can. And then utilize some of the other fields for your reporting, like commodities. That's associated with your unspec codes for most items. But that would help you with actually what type of contract is this for instead of using the contract. But yeah, you have to come up with some standards and making sure that you're assigning the right contract type, otherwise it can cause you some problems. But yeah, documentation isn't great. I will say we are working with a couple customers utilizing it now, and I've been building my own. And they have a really detailed knowledge base article out there. I think it's like 70 pages. It's a lot of detail, but it's a lot of old screen prints and stuff too. So you don't always know what you're looking for or how to utilize it right away. So yeah, I feel you. Totally understand. There's also a really cool terms library, which a lot of people don't utilize right away. But you may have the need for a terms library, and there's a whole different role called terms manager. And those can also go through their own approval process, alert the right people for them to update, and then update automatically to your contracts. So yeah, then you go through your builds, make sure you have the right structure, start building out your full contract repository, replace your PO25 agreements. If you're going to end up utilizing the approvals to work on your IPA, and any customizations, which I don't know if I have it in here, but once we have some screen prints of the application, I'll talk about the customizations that you can do. Go through your testing. So if you were at the session this morning where Justin was talking about upgrading to 10 and making sure you go through your test plan, that's important with implementation of any application or module, obviously, but making sure that you go through everything as detailed as possible, and making sure that you rule out all these real life situations. Train and deploy. So typically we recommend, if we're working with you on contract management, that you go to training even before the design ends up happening, so you understand the tool a little bit more before just going in with limited knowledge, like just having a presentation on it today. You're going to want to get more detail so you can make informed, educated decisions. And make sure you have good documentation on each role in the process with lots of print screens, presentation, webinar, anything that you can do to make sure that you educate whoever's using it. And then making sure you have a really good support plan, develop some metrics. So we're going to see a little bit of spreadsheet designer in here, which I'm really excited about. And then make sure that you're identifying any process gaps that, that may be happening and modify your process from there. So this is just one of the selections in contract management. It's called the contract manager role area. So there's a bunch of different options here on what tasks that manager is going to take. So creating contracts. This is a typical process. You start off just like how you do in Lawson today. You add your header, and then you add your line detail. From there, you can associate it with the vendor agreement that you want to add, or if you just want it to stay in contract management, you can do that. And then you also can go through approvals or negotiations through that redlining process. And then from there, you can release your contract. And this is somewhat what it looks like. So there's, I believe there's 6 different ways to add a contract. You can start from scratch. You can start from a template, so you can build a standard template. So if it's a materials contract, you can have it default what contract type, what contract classification, who the primary contact is, so you can customize a lot of that. There's an interview area, so basically you can come up with some standard questions that someone needs to answer, and depending on what they answer, it could default a lot of that information rather than them selecting it themselves. You can create a contract from an upload, and you can create a contract from an 832. Okay, so this is what it looks like in contract management. Just like Smart Office, there's different themes. You can choose different colors. This is just the standard blue. I understand you probably can't see that all that well. So anything that's starred is required. There's lots of information that can default, like your yellow and red alerts, which is basically when do you want the system to alert you that there's an expiration coming up. Document templates. I think this is really cool. You can customize your own documents. So again, I guess you can't really see that all that well. But this area here is basically you building your own template. So what fields in contract management do you want it to pull over into this document? So here it's saying supplier name, supplier delivery address 1, 2. It's got expiration dates, contract types, who the contact is, and a bunch of terms at the bottom. So here it's populating all that information from your contract that you added in that original screen. So you can add different types of contract templates depending on what type of contract that it is. So rather you recreating the wheel, it helps you. All right, so managing contracts. So this was another selection within the contract manager tool set. You have your in-process, your active, your inactive, closed. The contract hierarchy is where you'd see that parent-child contract area that we were talking about earlier. There's an in-process status analysis tab, which basically has some pie charts to let you know what the statuses are of your contracts. There's an area for alerts and your milestone and deliverable alerts. So just like Smart Office, you can personalize your experience. So you can add your own fields in here that are grabbing from the contract itself. Like if you wanted the primary contact name in here, you could add that column in. There's also a search button, so you could select that and then select all the contracts that you have. One thing that that I found is you typically want one place to search for all the contracts, not just by their status. There is a contract search area, but what I've actually done for someone is utilize Configuration Console to just add a new tab in for all contracts, no matter what the status is. So there's a lot of flexibility with that as well. All right, so features. All right. So another thing to take into consideration is your item add process. So right now, I'm sure a lot of you are uploading directly into IC11. It's easiest if you have a mass upload. I will say that once you implement contract management, you'll want to utilize the utilities to add directly into contract management first and then flow over to IC11. The reason being is if you do a mass upload in IC11 and those items are specials on your contracts now and you need to update that information, you have to use this utility. It can be very time consuming depending on the amount of items that you have. If you load directly into CM rather than IC11, it finds all of that before you even add the item, and it automatically updates the contract for you. So something to keep in mind. You can keep your current process. You'll just have to go through this tool. So basically, you can search by manufacturer number, and then here, if it says item found no, you can choose to add your own item from here. So if you load in all the spend, all of the invoice detail, you can calculate number of times purchased. So if you saw something that was ordered 17 times in the past 3 months, you probably want to add it to your item master. So from here, you could add those items. So this is what it looks like if you were adding the item from scratch. And then from here, it would let you know that it was created from a special item and give you that information. And then from here is just a screenshot of what it looks like when it finds the item master match. So here you can see the item number that it's associating with. So you basically add it to the top here and say you want to create an item, even though one's created already, it associates the two. And then you just tell the system to update the contract line, and it does all the updates from there. There's also a vendor, a supplier and vendor compare. Is that like cutting me off? Am I? So in the scenarios where you're associating a supplier number with a vendor, your Lawson vendor number, there's this utility that you can run to compare the two pieces of information. So AP may not know about an address change, until like 3 months after it happens. Who knows if they're just not paying attention when the invoice comes in, or it's just not visible to them. It's visible to supply chain. So if you keep that up to date here, you can run this utility. It finds out what's different, and you can either choose to, take supplier value or take the vendor value by each line, or you can do the whole thing up at top. So you'll want someone to manage this. You can choose, there's a selection where you can create a vendor from a supplier within contract management. You just have to have the right roles to do it. So it may be helpful to involve AP in the process for that reason. The screenshot's terrible. Sorry. This is an example of what the redlining process looks like if you choose to utilize vendor portal. So if you're working with the supplier and they have their own logins, here they'd see any kind of unread messages, and they'd see any bids to answer or any contracts that they need to redline and give more information on. There is a spend analysis tool. So basically, once you load in all those invoices, here you can view what the spend is for these contracts, commodity types, by binder, by diversity codes if you're utilizing those. All right, Spreadsheet Designer. Really excited about this. So Spreadsheet Designer is a separate application from MS Add-ins if you're using that today. So once you install it, it would be a separate tab. It's called Import. You can do queries or uploads, and it's basically, it works better than MS Add-ins does with the details. So I understand you can't see the tabs here, but basically you can build a query. You can add some filters. Let's say you only want to bring in a certain contract type, or you only want a certain date range. You can put that in your filters. You run your query. It puts it all into Excel for you. And you can create your own custom pivot tables or charts off of that. Nice and easy. You can save this and then refresh the data when you open it back up again. So you can do this, you know, as you want, ad hoc, or you can choose to utilize the Excel tools to post this data for you. So here I just ran a simple report on who the contract was submitted by and what contract type it is. And I have a chart off of that.
So essentially what you're saying is you can actually utilize this to run reports, create add-ins, and you essentially wouldn't even need crystal reports or any kind of in-depth reporting system at that point.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. It just depends on the amount of users that you have. You know, if you need to share contract information with the whole organization and it's 500 users, you utilize your dashboard and have a crystal report out there. But you know, if you have like a smaller contracts department and you're just managing metrics, seeing what's out there, just need to run a quick report, but have some nice details to go with it that summarizes the data well, this is the way to do it. I really like it. I like working with it. I like the upload features a lot more. It gives you more complex feedback of whether or not the upload was successful. It traffic lights them. So if it's bad, you know, that upload line didn't work, it highlights it in red. If it's successful, it's in green. If there was some sort of issue with it, I uploaded it, but information was missing, it's in yellow. So I like it. This is also used with global HR, so there's people using Spreadsheet Designer now. Another area where there's not great documentation that I found so far. So instead of Control-Shift-O in Lawson, it's Control-Shift-Click in the landmark application to find out what field that you're looking for. Lets you know the business class and the field name. So business class is like the table that the information resides in. Did you have a question?
Is there a separate security for the spreadsheet designer? Is it part of landmark security?
Yes, there is a separate security.
Is it delivered with contract management, or is it
Yes.
an add-on? Okay.
Yes, it's delivered. And they actually, one thing they do have a great document on is what the delivered security classes are and what that gives them access to. So if anyone's interested, I have my business cards here. You can send me an email. Be happy to share this slide deck and any other information that I have. So some other notable features that some of these we already talked about, the 832 price catalogs. You can manage your tiers a lot better. You can track rebates. You can do that red line tracking, which I didn't grab any screenshots of that, but we are building a demo box that Bill was mentioning, the Southeast User Group at the end of May. So we're building out a demo box to have you play with it. So another reason to go out to Myrtle Beach if you want some hands-on with the tool. Milestones and deliverables are also really cool. You can set reminders, and there's a whole bunch of email notifications that you can have automatically be sent out and run on their own to alert certain users of actions they need to take. So keys to a successful implementation, it's really important to make sure you do that data cleansing and making sure that your information is as accurate as it possibly can be before moving forward. Making sure that you go through the training first, just so you understand what the application can do for you before you even start with design. Helps you prioritize, helps you understand what's out there, so that you make sure that when you're designing, you're starting from scratch. It's just like any ERP system, it can be very complicated. So making sure you get it right at the beginning, because there's no turning back from there in most instances, depending on how much effort, type of contracts that you have. Make sure you have some skills in landmark administration. If you're on 10, you're using Lawson Security and you already have a landmark application, I'm sure most of you, if you aren't already, you should be using ISS, so that kind of helps keep the security in sync. There's also that personalizations area that I talked about in configuration console. That's separate training. I'd say if you're one that likes to get into things, figure it all out yourself. Configuration console is it's a lot of fun. So you can really customize everything that this tool can offer you and really make it work for you. Really plan to utilize your IPA. Contract management does come with some canned approval flows. You can customize them. I think the approval flow comes with 3 approval levels, so if you have more than that, you have to add on to it. Use the configuration console. Again, it's really cool. You can add your own fields. I'm sure it's just like Design Studio in a way, but I feel like it's a little bit easier to use. You can rename fields. We customized it by putting a submitted by because that wasn't the primary contact in whatever sense. Maybe it was the admin that submitted it and we wanted to track those names. So that was a custom field. It's built in the database. It adds it all there for you. You can still report on it. That's done with configuration console. And obviously advantage this with all the other competing projects that you have going on. You really want to make sure that you have users invested in making these decisions before moving forward. So I'm sure there's lots of questions. Maybe there isn't. Great.
Well, you mentioned audits. What additional audits does contract management have over just the standard PO25 audits?
Okay. I guess the part about audits is that what's your process? What do you want people to add and not add? And do you have controls over certain contract types of who can do what? So PO25 doesn't really offer much there. Or you may have a custom workflow for approvals. Terms aren't associated with contracts in PO25. Contract management, there are. They still, I think it's with 10, that it allows you to now audit and track the changes that happen in PO25, but not all information carries over from contract management into PO25. So there's additional audits there too in history that you can track. Did I answer that for you?
Yeah, it kind of leads me into another question I have. Security. Does the same Lawson security for PO25 apply to contract management, or is contract management security separate?
It's separate. But you still need some of the roles in your S3 portal in order for them to be able to take that action. So whoever's adding a contract in contract management, if they have that certain contract type that it says flow over to PO25, they need to have that access in order for it to flow over. Otherwise it will fail. There's a async administrator. We didn't get into any of that, which is very detailed. Certain things can fail and you need someone to manage it. Item master is another thing. If you're trying to do that item sync and associate certain items, if you don't have access to IC11, you won't be able to take that task. So usually the contracts team won't be able to go through that, and someone on your MIS team actually needs to go and take that action. Once a week, look for everything that says item match found and sync that detail. So yeah, it's shared. You still need some procurement roles from S3 in order to take certain actions in contract manager. Yes.
Strategic sourcing, contract management. Do you need both?
You do not need both. So
They are separate modules.
yes, they are. And there's also a vendor portal. So that's all part of the supplier resource management bundle. You can implement one and not the others. You can layer them in afterwards. We've heard some feedback that some users wish that they did the strategic sourcing first before they did contract management, but I think it just depends on your organization and what teams you have involved in the process. I can see doing it both ways, to be honest. It's just...
So there's not a recommendation of one or two, which one you would do first, or pretty much?
At this point, no, I don't have a recommendation. I don't have enough experience, I think, to pick one over the other. I think if it's a healthcare organization, you really want to take control of those specials and have an idea on spend and manage those items. So my preference would be to do contract management first.
I think it depends upon the size of the organization,
Yeah.
you know, what you're trying to manage, you know, so. But we probably don't have a big need for strategic sourcing at this point, you know, relative to the contract management piece. You know, so, but you also get the recall management.
Yeah,
along with that
exactly.
and everything else.
I will say one thing that's different is when you're adding suppliers in, you have to add a primary contact. And that primary contact needs to have a username and password. So if you're not utilizing vendor portal, you think it's a waste of your time and why do you have to put something in there, but it's required and you can't override it. So you end up having to put something generic in. So I can see that doing vendor portal along with contract management would be really beneficial. You can utilize VendorMate for your credentialing, so they can help you keep information up to date. So that would be one thing that if you have enough bandwidth to do vendor portal along with that, just so you can have the right user and contact information in there and don't add something generic unnecessarily. Utilize your vendors. Yes.
For those items that don't sit on a contract, then you won't have a contract for. Is there a way to put them in contract management so that they're at least tracked?
Absolutely.
And what way would you, what type, what kind would you do it as?
So you build your own types.
Right.
So it just depends on what type of contract that is and how you want to classify it. But basically, so you build your contract type. Let's just say it's a legal contract. There's no lines there. It's just a statement of work or something like that. You would have that contract type be set up that it's not associating with anything in PO25, so you keep it plain.
Oh yeah, we have those, we call them header, excuse me, headers only.
Mhm.
I'm thinking more in the line that there are lines and there are prices,
Mhm.
but really those prices really aren't a set price for a certain amount of time. Every time an invoice comes in, you could get billed something else.
Yep.
So you,
Would that be a service contract?
No.
Like list price.
Okay.
Like you pay, right, I would take it like a list price contract, that it's whatever the vendor says the price is. We don't have an agreement for a period of time for a price. It could change weekly, it could change yearly.
Yeah. So I would say those you would build as catalog quotes. They're still in Contract Manager, but your types would denote these are going over to a catalog quote. And then in your PO setup, your default rules, you would prioritize having it go to contract type pricing first, and if you couldn't find one, go to your catalog quote and put that price. So that's what I would say. Does that answer your
yeah,
question?
it does. And then there's there are times when, at least in our organization, I'm not convinced I totally know why, but there are items in contract management that have different prices, okay? And when you try to pull the information out of contract management to do something like a physical inventory for the OR, and the OR doesn't know your price. So you have to pull it from contract management, but that item sits on two different contracts and it has two different dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you?
So I believe what the system does is it gives you the opportunity to put a priority. So you would need to say which price takes priority, and then you would use the highest priority as your number one. If you don't put a priority or they're the same, I believe the system just goes sequentially. by number or alphabetically. So just finds the first one, which happens in PO25 today. We don't have those set up.
They have two different contracts.
I don't know. I think so.
So if you're going by contract number, they just pull.
Yeah, but we're not pulling by contract. For our physical inventory, they just want to know what the price is, and it sits on two.
And they wouldn't necessarily use IC 283 for that because they may have some specials that they have on their shelf that you just don't. But I see your point. Yeah, that's where I would say that you'd probably utilize a custom report or use Spreadsheet Designer to bring in some of that information.
One last question.
Sure.
For the rebate process, can you make contract management create an invoice so that you can send it out to the vendor? And if you don't have the vendor mate and you're not using that communication, can you create an invoice so that you can mail it to the vendor?
I actually don't know about that, so I'll write that one down.
Okay. Because how else?
Yeah, I know there's certain things that it stores that information for you and sends it over to AP. I don't know if AP actually would use this tool besides the vendor maintenance part. So I'll look into that.
Do you
I'm
mean
not
AP
sure.
or do you mean account revenue?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Couple of questions. One's a follow-up to the question regarding strategic sourcing. So if just implementing contract management, from a contract management perspective, is there any like key functionality that wouldn't be realized by not having strategic sourcing? Anything that like you kind of covered that is, dependent upon having strategic sourcing?
So I would say there's some additional features in RQC. So if you have a requester that wants a product, they don't know what vendor that they want to order it from, or they're hoping it goes out to bid and they want purchasing a part of that process and they need to be, they can select go out for an event, and then strategic sourcing, you can choose to bid it, share, change information, and then have that feed through. So I can see that being really beneficial if you end up doing a lot of bidding for products. If you don't have certain suppliers that you work with for particular things, you do a lot of negotiating. So I would say that's one big one. Trying to think. I think that's probably the biggest one.
And then you also had talked just briefly about other like contract repositories. So how, just from your experience, does contract management kind of complement that? Does it replace, another repository that we might be utilizing? Are they totally separate, serve separate purposes?
I'd say it's definitely dependent on the organization and what tool that you're using for what things. Contract manager can do it all. There's a lot of different features that you can utilize or not utilize at all. You can choose to interface some details back and forth. So right now, it may be a little bit frustrating as part of the process that you actually have to go to the GPO site and download it and then upload it into Contract Manager. So I know that they're looking into certain interfaces to help optimize that. I do know that there's also things like GHX. They have Contract Center, and they also have P-Suite, Procurement Suite, and they can store a lot of that information and have it feed back in to Lawson through a PO interface. But that's not capturing all of your contract types. It's just mostly capturing your GPO contracts. So, you may choose to still utilize some of those tools in conjunction with contract management, but I find that it does a very good job connecting all those different types of contracts, those different teams, and bringing it really into one place. Your legal team could use it, they could be users and manage their own contracts there, and you can customize your security that they only see what are theirs and they can't see everything else. So I find it's a good tool to bring all those things together and have one contract repository.
one really quick final question. Sure. So you placed a lot of emphasis on training kind of before getting involved in the whole implementation process. Do you have any tips on where to kind of find those training resources? You talked about the fact that the documentation is lacking.
Yes. Infor does offer a 5-day training on contract management and a 3-day on strategic sourcing. You can do them remotely through like just a virtual training. I find that obviously going in person is way more beneficial. But the virtual training is helpful as well. It's very detailed. You go through a lot of different things. RPI also offers training courses to get more in the weeds of a lot of these different features and implications of setting certain things up a specific way. And again, there's not much of a community now, but it's growing. A lot of organizations purchased this product a couple years ago, and it's just kind of been sitting there. Either they wanted to wait until they implemented IPA first, got some landmark skills, and then implement contract management. So I'm finding that I think by the end of this year, there's going to be a lot more people using it and sharing information and learning from each other. And definitely at Inform this year, I'm sure there's going to be a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I think on that note, I'm sure everybody's getting hungry. So, Stephanie, you're going to be around during the roundtable as well.
I will be for a little bit,
Okay.
but I do have cards here, so please take my card.
Can I just mention something real quick? Stephanie's actually going to host a procurement day we think in June,
Yeah.
and we'll send a notice to you. You can send it to your members. It'll be remote presentations. They'll be available on the web.
Okay.
If you're so inclined, you're welcome to come to our Baltimore office and be part of the live people that are there. So we welcome that. We like to have people asking questions. So.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Is there a fee for that?
For,
For what you just said?
for coming out to Baltimore?
No,
Oh,
for
sorry.
doing it via the web.
The webinars? No.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually have a bunch out on YouTube. I made a couple changes there. Here you go. So I made a couple changes from me watching it on there. But there's one out there for RPC best practices and a couple other supply chain related ones. So we don't get to watch it live. We always post it on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.